Ah, Brandon, beautiful, beautiful lot in Oklahoma. Look, I set up my tent. Let's go out here by the tent. Let's go out here by the easy wireless tent. Oh, I could type and type and type and type and have, and it'd be the same thing. All right, be easier for me to tell you in a video. Let's talk about criteria. So, if you made a judgment, Brandon, like you said the evidence is not good. The evidence for God's is not good evidence. Well, that's making a judgment about the evidence. Now, if you've made a judgment about a thing ever, you have applied criteria. And if you can't name what your criteria is, your criteria might have been subjective. Kind of like, I don't like mustard. You know what I mean? It's just an opinion. Subjective criteria is no. Look, there's the Kiowa offices. This is El Rodeo. This is the Democratic Party headquarters here. Quick cleaners. Right. So subjective criteria is no better than opinion. You understand what I'm saying? Objective criteria is a different thing. Let's talk about objective criteria for a second. Have you ever heard of the Cavendish experiment? The Cavendish experiment, I believe it happened in the 1700s. Mr. Cavendish carried it out. He was a smart guy, and he wanted to prove that masses attract. He's proven the theory of gravity essentially with the Cavendish experiment. The proposition is that masses attract, and that if you measure the attraction between two known masses, then you have proved it. So the criteria is, can we observe two objects of known mass being attracted, being pulled towards each other? Can we measure that attraction? Can we observe it, and can we measure it? So your criteria is an objective criteria. Can we observe two known masses moving towards each other via the attraction of masses? That's objective criteria for the Cavendish experiment that proves gravity and actually can measure the mass of the Earth. I kid you not. The Cavendish experiment in the 1700s measured the mass of the Earth. The more accurately you can measure the force of attraction between your two masses, the more accurately you can calculate the mass of the Earth, which is a pretty cool thing for science. And we are talking about science now, Brandon, because contrary to what you think, there is no conflict at all between science and Islam. Contrary to what you think, there is zero conflict between science and the Quran. None at all. Maybe people can take the Bible and they can calculate a ridiculous 6,000 year age for the Earth, which is obviously absurd. But you cannot do that with the Quran. You can't calculate any age for the Earth from the Quran. How about that? Something to ponder. So, here's the deal. What objective criteria will you apply to the proposition that the Quran is from the Creator? That's the question. Before you can make a decision of whether or not it's from the Creator, you would need to have some objective criteria. And I'll give you some examples of that criteria that you could use. For instance, I would expect a text that came from the Almighty Creator would have no contradictions in it whatsoever. I would expect it to be beautiful language. I would expect it to be deep in meaning and explain the meaning of life. I think these are all objective criteria that you could apply to the Quran. Criteria satisfied. It satisfies all those criteria. The same way that the Cavendish experiment satisfies the criteria of, can we see two masses move together? Yes, we see them move together. We can measure the attraction. Criterion satisfied. Gravity proved, right? So there you go. All I'm asking, and all I've ever been asking all of your atheist friends is, can you name your criteria that you use to reject the Quran? And no one has yet named their criteria, objective or subjective. They can't name their criteria because it gets too close to that question of, well, what would prove God to you? And your standard answer is, well, your God would know. Hey, my God isn't asking you, I am. And if you don't know what would prove God to you, then then definitely your criteria is subjective. In fact, you refuse to name your criteria. You refuse to name your criteria because you're afraid of being busted out that it's subjective. Sorry, but your opinion is just your opinion.